I like to set everything up ahead of time. I've got all the bottles with the corresponding filters and also with their tags. That way you make sure that the samples get into the right jars. And then I'll also set up the lab sample form that gets sent in. I usually pre-fill that out as well. Note date and time and sampled by. Just makes it a lot easier on the day. So for cleaning your buckets, you want to make sure you have a designated bucket that you only use for taking your samples and that you clean it each time before you take a sample. Some water. You just want to clean it really well. All right. And there you go. Nice clean bucket.
You basically want no air bubbles, but if you do, it must be smaller than like the size of a quarter.
But I usually just stick this right in the fridge when we bring it back. So to take our samples, we just use the little syringe here. Take a sample out of here. The Ortho-P sample requires the thicker filter. This one does not have anything in the bottle, but it's just the brown bottle. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to get the sample to come through. And when you fill these, you want to make sure you only fill them up to the collar of the bottle, and that gives them just a little bit of wiggle room if they need to shake the sample up. And then you would make sure to record the date and time and who was the person to take the sample. Because they do sometimes get a little wet, I usually like to use a permanent marker, and then you can just attach it around the bottle to make sure that it's labeled. And I usually just set that aside. This one is DOC, and this one you use a bottle that has some hydrochloric acid in there, and it uses the thinner filter. This is the filter that can be a little bit more of a pain to get stuff out. So you might have to either have help or, like, I like to push it against my shoulder. One thing I will say is you don't want to set this like this because this filter can actually like push into the bottle. And we're kind of just going just up to the collar. So that one's done. For the TP, it's also in with the one marked hydrochloric acid, so it has a little bit of liquid in the bottom, but it has no filter, so you just put the water straight in. So this is the TP, and it's done. And also for twisting them, they kind of have a little lip, so if you can get the rubber under there, it seems to hold better. And the final one, NH3, NO2, and NO3, and TPN. This one uses sulfuric acid, so H2SO4, and does not take a filter. All right, so you would put that one on there as well. And then all of these samples are done. I usually put them in a bag before I put them in the cooler in case anything leaks. And then this one goes on our BOD, which is right now in the fridge. So take it out to put the tag on it. The BOD, actually all of the samples need to be kept between 1 and 4 degrees until they're sent to the lab. So when you're done with all your paperwork, when you have your date filled in, you have your time that you're sending it, who you're sending it to, you have your work order written down. On this lab sheet, they're going to take the white and the yellow copy, and you're going to retain the pink one for in your notebook. So I usually just set that one aside. And then this would be, for your BOD, it has your pH would be written right here. And so I usually just kind of fold these up and put them in a bag in case you do have anything spill. And now we're set to put it in the cooler. When you get your cooler from the lab, they will give you a bunch of ice in it. So when you're packing your samples in there, you're going to want to really make sure that you take your ice out of the freezer, you put it into the sample container, and put in my bottles that have been in the fridge to keep them cool. And the BOD. Make sure they're upright, make sure that the caps are on really tight. I like to put something on the bottom and something on each side of each of the samples. And then I'll put all that in there, and then I use packing material. Some of it comes in the cooler from the lab, but I also just save some from when I make like purchases, because it really just helps keep everything in place. It's not rattling around. So then I pack that in there pretty securely. And then the last thing I put in is my paperwork that's in a plastic bag. Put that in, and then you can close it and you're ready to go. It's really important that you talk to your shipper before your sample date so that you can find out when their pickup is. So when is like the latest that you can drop them off. You also want to make sure that they can do overnight. It has to be within 48 hours from when you took your sample to when they receive it. I do like the earliest delivery that they can. But you definitely want to check, because some places might have a rule where this isn't a regular package, and so it needs to be put in a box before they can ship it. Some places will ship this just fine, but it's good to know before you do your sample so you're not stressing on the day. And the other thing is I usually wait to tape it until we get there in case they say, hey, we need to look inside your package before we can send it. Tape it there and then fill out the little tamper-proof tag. I'll fill this out. I put my name and what the project is, the date. Also usually put the lab work order on there, the work order ID, just so that they have an easy way to see what it's in reference to. And then after it's taped, you will just put this on right here. That just shows that it hasn't been opened. So that is all the samples completed.